Welcome, curious minds, to a journey into the often unseen corners of the human psyche. Today, we delve into the intriguing, and at times unsettling, realm of dark psychology. This isn't about villainizing humanity, but rather understanding the complex interplay of motivations, biases, and environmental factors that can lead to behaviors we might label as dark. From the subtle manipulations in everyday interactions to the grand narratives of historical events, the principles of dark psychology are at play, shaping our world in profound ways. The allure of control, understanding manipulation. At the heart of dark psychology lies the concept of manipulation. It's a word that often carries negative connotations, conjuring images of puppeteers pulling strings. But manipulation, in its broadest sense, is simply the act of influencing others to achieve a desired outcome. While this can be used for benevolent purposes, dark manipulation involves exploiting vulnerabilities, distorting reality, and eroding autonomy for personal gain. We'll explore various manipulative tactics, from gaslighting and emotional blackmail to more subtle forms of persuasion that operate beneath our conscious awareness. Consider the art of gaslighting, an insidious form of manipulation where an individual or group makes someone question their own sanity, perception, or memories. This can be a slow, insidious process, chipping away at a person's self-trust until they become entirely dependent on the manipulator's version of reality. Imagine a partner constantly denying things they've said, making you doubt your own recollection of events. Over time, this can lead to profound confusion and a loss of self-identity. The power of gaslighting lies in its ability to isolate the victim, making them believe they are irrational or mentally unstable, thus making them more susceptible to further control. Emotional blackmail, another potent manipulative tool, preys on our deepest fears and desires. It involves using threats, guilt, or obligation to force someone into compliance. This could manifest as a parent threatening to withdraw love if a child doesn't conform to their wishes, or a friend using guilt trips to get their way. The manipulator creates a sense of obligation, making the victim feel responsible for the manipulator's happiness or well-being, thereby trapping them in a cycle of appeasement. This tactic often exploits our innate desire for connection and approval, turning these very human needs into weapons of control. Beyond these overt tactics, subtle forms of manipulation are woven into the fabric of our daily lives. Advertising, for instance, often employs psychological triggers to influence our purchasing decisions. The strategic placement of products, the use of appealing imagery, and the creation of a sense of urgency all play on our subconscious desires and fears. Similarly, in social interactions, people may unconsciously use mirroring, subtly imitating another's body language, to build rapport, or employ flattery to gain favor. While these might seem innocuous, they highlight the pervasive nature of influence and how easily our decisions can be swayed by forces we don't fully comprehend. The shadow of narcissism, the self-obsessed mind. Narcissism, often misunderstood as mere vanity, is a personality trait characterized by an inflated sense of self-importance, a deep need for excessive attention and admiration, troubled relationships, and a lack of empathy for others. While a healthy sense of self-esteem is crucial for well-being, pathological narcissism can lead to destructive behaviors, both for the individual and those around them. We'll explore the different facets of narcissism, from the grandiose and overt to the vulnerable and covert, and how these manifestations impact interpersonal dynamics. Grandiose narcissists are often the ones we recognize most readily. Charismatic, confident, and seemingly invincible. They exude an aura of superiority, constantly seeking validation and admiration from others. Their self-esteem is often fragile, however, and they react with intense anger or defensiveness to any perceived criticism or challenge to their inflated self-image. They may exploit others without remorse, viewing people as mere extensions of themselves, existing solely to fulfill their needs. This type of narcissism is often fueled by a deep-seated insecurity, masked by an outward display of arrogance and entitlement. Vulnerable narcissism, on the other hand, is a more subtle and often overlooked form. These individuals are equally self-absorbed but lack the overt grandiosity of their counterparts. They are often shy, introverted, and hypersensitive to criticism, constantly seeking reassurance and validation. Their sense of entitlement is present, but it manifests as a feeling of being misunderstood or unfairly treated. They may engage in passive-aggressive behaviors, using victimhood to manipulate others into providing the attention and care they crave. This form of narcissism can be particularly damaging in relationships, as their constant need for reassurance can be emotionally draining for their partners. Both forms of narcissism share a common thread: a profound lack of empathy. Narcissists struggle to understand or share the feelings of others, viewing the world primarily through the lens of their own needs and desires. This emotional detachment allows them to exploit and manipulate others without experiencing guilt or remorse. They may be charming and engaging at first, but as relationships deepen, their inability to connect on an emotional level becomes apparent, leading to a trail of broken hearts and shattered trust. ####The dark triad. A dangerous combination. When we speak of dark psychology, it's impossible to ignore the dark triad, a dangerous combination of three distinct but overlapping personality traits: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. While each trait can exist independently, their combination creates a particularly potent and often destructive personality profile. Understanding the dark triad is crucial for recognizing and protecting oneself from individuals who may pose a significant threat to one's emotional and psychological well-being. Machiavellianism, named after the political philosopher Niccolò Machiavelli, is characterized by a manipulative, cynical, and strategic approach to life. Individuals high in Machiavellianism are often emotionally detached, prioritizing their own self-interest above all else. They are masters of deception, willing to lie, cheat, and exploit others to achieve their goals. Unlike narcissists, who seek admiration, Machiavellians are driven by a desire for power and control. They view relationships as transactional, constantly assessing how others can be used to further their own agenda. They are often charming and persuasive, able to disarm their targets with a veneer of sincerity, only to reveal their true intentions when it's too late. Their cold, calculating nature makes them formidable adversaries, as they are unburdened by empathy or moral considerations. Psychopathy, perhaps the most disturbing of the dark triad traits, is marked by a profound lack of empathy, remorse, and guilt, coupled with impulsivity, superficial charm, and antisocial behavior. Psychopaths are often skilled at mimicking emotions they don't genuinely feel, allowing them to blend seamlessly into society while secretly preying on others. They are thrill seekers, constantly seeking new sources of stimulation and excitement, often at the expense of others' safety or well-being. Their inability to form genuine emotional attachments makes them particularly dangerous in relationships, as they are capable of inflicting immense pain without a flicker of conscience. While not all psychopaths are criminals, the trait is strongly associated with violent and exploitative behavior. It's important to note that psychopathy exists on a spectrum, and not everyone exhibiting some psychopathic tendencies is a full-blown psychopath. However, even mild expressions of these traits can have devastating consequences for those who encounter them. The interplay between these three traits is what makes the dark triad so dangerous. A narcissistic individual might use Machiavellian tactics to gain admiration, while a psychopath might employ both narcissism and Machiavellianism to manipulate and exploit their victims. These individuals often thrive in environments where power and control are valued, such as corporate settings or political arenas. They are adept at climbing the ladder, using their charm and ruthlessness to outmaneuver competitors. Recognizing the signs of the dark triad is the first step towards protecting oneself from their destructive influence. This involves trusting your instincts, setting firm boundaries, and refusing to engage in power struggles that only serve to empower the manipulator. ###The psychology of obedience. Why good people do bad things. One of the most unsettling aspects of dark psychology is understanding how ordinary individuals can be compelled to commit acts that go against their moral compass. The psychology of obedience explores the powerful influence of authority and social pressure on human behavior. Classic experiments, such as Stanley Milgram's obedience study, have shed light on the surprising willingness of individuals to inflict harm when instructed by an authority figure. This section will delve into the mechanisms behind obedience, including the diffusion of responsibility, the foot-in-the-door phenomenon, and the power of dehumanization. Stanley Milgram's groundbreaking experiment, conducted in the 1960s, aimed to understand the willingness of participants to obey an authority figure who instructed them to perform acts conflicting with their personal conscience. Participants were told they were part of a study on memory and learning and were assigned the role of teacher, while a confederate was the learner. The teacher's task was to administer electric shocks to the learner for incorrect answers, with the voltage increasing with each error. Crucially, the shocks were not real, but the teachers believed they were. Despite the learner's protests and cries of pain pre-recorded, a significant number of participants continued to administer shocks, even up to the maximum lethal voltage, simply because the experimenter, an authority figure, instructed them to do so. This experiment revealed the chilling power of situational factors and the profound influence of authority on human behavior, demonstrating that even good people can be led to commit acts they would otherwise consider morally reprehensible. The diffusion of responsibility is another key concept in understanding why individuals might act against their better judgment in group settings. When multiple people are present, the responsibility for action or inaction is spread among them, leading each individual to feel less accountable. This phenomenon, often observed in bystander effect scenarios, can explain why people might fail to intervene in emergencies or stand up against injustice when others are also present. The thought process often becomes, someone else will do it, or it's not my responsibility, leading to collective inaction. This psychological mechanism highlights how easily individual moral compasses can be overridden by the perceived lack of personal accountability within a group dynamic. It's not that individuals are inherently bad, but rather that the social context can dilute their sense of personal agency and moral obligation. The foot-in-the-door phenomenon describes a compliance strategy where a small request is made, and once it is granted, a larger request is made. This technique exploits our natural desire for consistency. Once we agree to a small favor, we are more likely to agree to a larger, related favor, even if it goes against our initial inclinations. For example, a salesperson might first ask you to sign a petition, a small commitment, before asking you to purchase a product, a larger commitment. This seemingly innocuous initial agreement creates a psychological pressure to maintain consistency in our behavior, making us more susceptible to subsequent, more significant requests. This gradual escalation of demands can lead individuals down a path they might not have chosen if the full extent of the request had been presented up front. Dehumanization, the process of stripping individuals or groups of their humanity, is a powerful psychological tool used to justify cruelty and violence. When people are viewed as less than human, it becomes easier to inflict harm upon them without experiencing guilt or remorse. This can occur through language, propaganda, or the creation of stereotypes that portray certain groups as inherently evil, dangerous, or inferior. Historically, dehumanization has been a precursor to atrocities, allowing perpetrators to rationalize their actions by convincing themselves that their victims are not worthy of moral consideration. By reducing others to mere objects or animals, the psychological barriers to violence are removed, paving the way for unimaginable cruelty. Understanding this process is vital for recognizing and resisting the narratives that seek to strip away the dignity and rights of any group. ####The lure of the cult, groupthink and mind control. Cults, with their charismatic leaders and devoted followers, offer a stark illustration of how dark psychological principles can be harnessed to exert extreme control over individuals. The phenomenon of groupthink, coupled with sophisticated mind control techniques, can transform otherwise rational individuals into unquestioning adherents, willing to sacrifice their lives, fortunes, and families for the sake of the group. This section will explore the psychological vulnerabilities that cults exploit, the mechanisms of coercive persuasion, and the devastating impact on those who fall under their sway. Groupthink, a term coined by psychologist Irving Janis, refers to a psychological phenomenon that occurs within a group of people in which the desire for harmony or conformity in the group results in an irrational or dysfunctional decision-making outcome. In cults, groupthink is amplified to an extreme degree. Dissent is suppressed, critical thinking is discouraged, and an illusion of unanimity is fostered. Members are often isolated from external information and social support, making the cult's ideology the sole source of truth. This creates an echo chamber where alternative viewpoints are not only rejected but actively demonized, reinforcing the cult's narrative and solidifying the members' commitment. The pressure to conform is immense, as deviation can lead to ostracization or severe punishment, further entrenching the groupthink mentality. Coercive persuasion, often referred to as mind control, is a systematic process used by cults to manipulate individuals' thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. This is not about overt force, but rather a subtle, insidious erosion of an individual's autonomy and critical thinking abilities. Techniques include love bombing, overwhelming new recruits with affection and attention, isolation from family and friends, sleep deprivation, repetitive indoctrination, and the creation of a dependency on the group for all needs. The goal is to break down an individual's existing belief system and replace it with the cult's ideology. This process is often gradual, making it difficult for victims to recognize they are being manipulated until they are deeply entrenched. The psychological impact can be profound, leading to severe emotional distress, identity confusion, and difficulty reintegrating into mainstream society after leaving a cult. The devastating impact of cults extends beyond the individual members to their families and society at large. Families are torn apart as members sever ties with loved ones who do not embrace the cult's beliefs. Financial resources are often drained, as members are pressured to donate their assets to the cult. In extreme cases, cults have engaged in criminal activities, violence, and even mass suicide. The psychological scars on survivors can last a lifetime, requiring extensive therapy and support to heal from the trauma of coercive control. Understanding the dynamics of cults is not just an academic exercise. It is crucial for protecting vulnerable individuals and fostering resilience against manipulative influences in society. ###The psychology of power, corruption, and control. Power, while often seen as a necessary component of social organization, carries with it a dark side: the potential for corruption and abuse. The psychology of power explores how holding positions of authority can alter an individual's behavior, cognition, and even their moral compass. From the subtle shifts in perception to overt acts of tyranny, the dynamics of power can reveal unsettling truths about human nature. This section will delve into the psychological effects of power, including the empathy deficit, the illusion of control, and the tendency towards self-serving bias. The empathy deficit, a common consequence of holding power, refers to a diminished ability to understand or share the feelings of others. Studies have shown that individuals in positions of power tend to be less empathetic, less compassionate, and more likely to objectify others. This can be attributed to several factors. Power often creates social distance, reducing opportunities for genuine connection. It can lead to a sense of entitlement, where the needs and feelings of subordinates are deemed less important. And it can foster a belief that one's own success is solely due to personal merit, rather than external factors or the contributions of others. This lack of empathy can have devastating consequences, leading to decisions that are devoid of human consideration and prioritize self-interest over the well-being of others. When leaders lose their ability to connect with the suffering of those they govern, the path to oppression and injustice becomes dangerously clear. The illusion of control, another psychological pitfall of power, is the tendency for individuals to overestimate their ability to control events, even those that are largely determined by chance. This can lead to overconfidence, risk-taking, and a reluctance to acknowledge mistakes. Powerful individuals may come to believe that their decisions are always correct, and that any negative outcomes are due to external factors or the failings of others. This cognitive bias can be particularly dangerous in leadership roles, as it can lead to a disregard for expert advice, a failure to adapt to changing circumstances, and a perpetuation of flawed strategies. The illusion of control can create a dangerous feedback loop, where initial successes reinforce the belief in one's own infallibility, leading to increasingly reckless decisions and ultimately catastrophic failures. Self-serving bias, a pervasive cognitive bias, refers to the tendency to attribute positive outcomes to internal factors, e.g., one's own ability or effort, and negative outcomes to external factors, e.g., bad luck or the actions of others. In the context of power, this bias can become amplified, leading powerful individuals to take excessive credit for successes while deflecting blame for failures. This not only disturbs their perception of reality, but also hinders their ability to learn from mistakes and improve their decision-making. When leaders consistently attribute their successes to their own brilliance and their failures to external circumstances, they create an environment where accountability is eroded and genuine self-reflection is impossible. This can foster a culture of blame and resentment, undermining trust and collaboration within an organization or society.